Welcome to our weekly Forex market analysis call. And this is for trading for the week of September 10th to the 14th, 2018. Before we get started and dive in here, just a quick disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. All right, so we will start off by taking a look at our calendar here in terms of so before we go in here, just a quick point to make. We are seeing a lot of volatility in the market in regards to the British pound because of Brexit negotiations. So last week it was very volatile. So just be mindful of that, regardless of what the technicals are telling you. If a news comes out or comment comes out that is positive for Brexit, it will drive British pound up. And if a comment comes out that is not good for Brexit negotiations, it will drive the British pound down. So last week, the British pound was more like a yo-yo, and it was just all over the place. And liquidity was low last week as well. What that means is that prices get driven around a lot more. The price move can get exaggerated as a result of that. So as we are getting into September, liquidity should pick up now, but just be careful that we are just kind of getting into those good trading days. But there are things going around right now: NAFTA negotiations, Brexit, and these kind of things, and now the China as well with the trade wars going on. So just be careful and pay attention to your news feed and just pay attention to these comments, because they can drive the market outside of the scheduled news that comes out, as well as the technicals. All right, so in terms of the news, GDP numbers for British pound, those numbers will be important because they show how the economy is doing. So very important numbers that the banks focus on, or the central bank focuses on. So GDP will be important. Manufacturing production numbers will be important here. For pound average earnings. So this one here will be very important. We saw non-farm payroll come out last Friday, and it was positive numbers. So same thing here for British pound here. Employment numbers will be important, but average earnings numbers are also very important. If the employment numbers are good, but average earnings are not good, it can still make it go down. So it's all three numbers taken together. ZEW economic sentiment is an important number for euro, even though it's not red. And PPI numbers, this number will be important. It will have an impact on US dollar here. And then we have FOMC member Brainard speaking here. So when FOMC members speak, their speeches can move the market. And reason for that is if they say something that is opposing to whatever the current policy is, or they start calling for things that are kind of opposite to that, then it causes the currency to drop, or it can cause the currency to drop. And also, if they say something that is in support of raising rates and talk about economy looking good and jobs being added, that sort of stuff, and they're all positive about it, change in monetary policy, that can push the currency up. So that's what we need to pay attention to here. Australian employment numbers, again, will be important for Australian dollar. Very, very important here for British pound. We have our official bank rate statement, monetary policy summary, and then we have this official bank rate votes, right? So British pound had, or UK had raised rates. And as a result of that, we had seen all the members vote for an interest rate hike. And as a result, as we can see, interest rate went up from 0.50 to 0.75% in August. But now we're not looking for another interest rate hike at this point. But if the commentary mentions anything about it, that can have an impact. So even though we're not expecting an interest rate hike, the commentary can make a difference. And then right on top of that, we have Euro news here as well, main financing rate, which is their interest rate, and ECB press conference. So back to back for both of them. I would expect a lot of volatility for British pound and Euro on a Thursday here. And then, of course, we have CPI numbers. CPI is inflation, and inflation is one of the main things that central banks will focus on when they talk about when they talk about tightening the monetary policy. So very important number, and we want to see the inflation numbers going up. If the inflation numbers go up, that's good, or they go up at a reasonable rate, that's good. But if we see a negative or a drop, sorry, I should say, in the inflation number, that will be negative for US dollar. And then we have on Friday, we have Bank of England, Governor Carney is speaking. He's not, there's no press conference right after, but he's speaking on Friday. And especially right now for Bank of England, this is very important because everybody's looking to see, are they going to continue raising rates or not? So market is looking for forward guidance from Bank of England. So what Carney says will be very important. And as a result, we could see prices move as a result of his speech. And then we have retail sales and core retail sales for US. And that is also an important number for US dollar that we'll have to pay attention to. All right, so let's move on to our charts now. We'll start off with euro dollar. And okay, so here last week we were looking for euro to drop after that pin bar, and we have seen that drop. And now we have a nice another pin bar looking candle here. Sorry about the mic. So we have another pin bar here. So this is bearish, looking for price to drop further here. So the first target would be 1.1450. And then we have 1387. I think we could just get rid of that one. And then we are back into our 1300 level. So right there, we're coming into lots of support in terms of euro here. So that will be the target, 1.1450. Level, and it can go down, like I said, all the way to 1386, and then finally into 1.1300. So those are the few targets to the downside. Now we do have ECB, and ECB can change things if they are positive. So last week or a couple of weeks ago, Merkel was from Germany was calling for ECB to tighten the monetary policy, and if there is anything around tightening of monetary policy, euro can shoot up. So just be careful with that one. Okay, pound here. Pound has been a little up and down. So if we take a look at last week here, we have seen some interesting moves. This big move was driven by comments, another move driven by Brexit comments here. So now in terms of our weekly, we have a very neutral candle close as a result of all those comments. So if we take a look at the hourly chart here, we'll see prices went up, came down, went up again, very inefficient move, did another push to the high, all the way to the high, and then dropped from there. So it's been one big range as a result of all these back and forth moves. So from weekly perspective, this is very neutral. So now we'll have to see where it goes. With neutral candles, prices can go either way. So with this one here, if the price stays, so the important thing here will be if the price stays below the 130.30 level, the high here. So if we were to go back to our 1 hour chart, this high. So if price stays below this high here, chances are it's going to drop. So this high right there, which is about 30.30 level, if it stays below, it will drop. But what could happen is, especially with Bank of England and Brexit negotiations, if the news is positive, or positive comments come out, it can do one of these, because we do have this move to the upside here, which can push it higher. So right now, my bias is neutral, and we'll just have to see how this plays out. Aussie dollar here, huge drop for Aussie, especially following the non-farm payroll here. And weekly, we were looking for a drop from last week, and there we are, all the way into our second target here. Now for the next week, this is looking bearish as well, big bearish candle close. Now do keep in mind, we are coming into some support. This was an important support where price was bouncing off, and then we have further support. We're coming into the lows here. So the closer we get to the lows, more buyers will be sitting there, more orders will be sitting there. So do keep that in mind. With this one, the bias is to the downside, and 0.6980 will be the target back into the bottom of this pin. So bias is to the downside. New Zealand dollar here, we were looking for a drop, and we got that drop right into the bottom here. It closed after the non-farm payroll, it closed below our target, our support here. So that's a good sign. That shows that the momentum is to the downside. So looking for it to drop further. Target here will be 64.50 level. So 64.50 will be the target to the downside. So that's what I'm looking for. Bias is to the downside for New Zealand dollar. And then we have a dollar CAD. Dollar CAD was interesting because of the news here. And what we see here is a bullish candle close for this week as well. And now looking for price to move up higher. One thing to keep in mind with dollar CAD is that it is into resistance. So we have this support and resistance level that comes all the way from here. And that's where price is getting stuck at the moment. We have multiple or two pins here. And again, we are seeing reaction to this level. This is where it's coming from. So having said that, bias is still to the upside. Now, what that means for us is if the price is not able to clear this resistance, then it can go back into a range because it has been range bound for several weeks here. So this is the range it's been trading in. Overall bias is slightly to the downside here, but it's been kind of range bound. So if price is not able to break through this 1.30 to 30 level, it can come back into the range. But it is a green candle close, but so was this green candle close, right? So what that means is that it does have momentum to the downside, biases, to the upside, biases to the upside, but we just have to be mindful of the resistance. So next two levels for dollar CAD will be 1.30, 3,300 and 3,390. So biases to the upside. Euro pound, this one was a little bit crazy last week as well, with multiple drops like this because of pound news. And this one is looking bearish. We have a bearish pin bar here. So looking for price to move lower as a result of that. Bias is to the downside, and the target here would be 0.8800 back into this support and resistance level here. So this is, we had a bearish candle close, a pullback, pin bar. So it's likely to drop as a result of that. So bearish bias. Euro Swiss franc here, nice pin bar, looking for price to drop. Next target here will be our 1.110 level. So bias is to the downside for Euro Swiss franc. Pound Swiss franc here, this one has a doji, not quite as strong to the downside as our euro is, but bias is still to the downside. So next target here would be 1.2380 and then 1.2200 below that back into this support here. So bias is to the downside. And again, as we can see, the momentum here is not quite the same as the euro. Here we see large candles, whereas pound Swiss for several weeks here, it's just been small candles. So even though momentum is to the downside, it's not as strong. All right, so dollar Swiss franc here. So this one is neutral, very, very neutral candle close, sideways at the moment, because US dollar is strong and so is Swiss franc, and that gives us the neutral bias here. With this one, I would just look to see how it reacts at the support or at resistance. If price goes up and it's not able to break through the resistance, I will look for it to come back into the range. Goes into the bottom, not able to break through the bottom, and I will look for it to come back into the, like this, right? So it goes to test the support, doesn't break through, push back into the into our range here once again. So neutral bias for dollar Swiss franc. Pound yen. Pound yen is neutral here as well. We haven't seen much move. So we have a doji, we have pins on both sides. Price opened and closed at the same level. So nothing much has changed. And we can see here the volume for the last couple of weeks was neutral as well. So with this one, at the moment, we have to wait and see where it goes because it could drop from there. If it doesn't break this 14500 level, so this is the range it's been trading in all week. And even though we had a bearish candle close here, it came into support, pushed back up. So the way we could trade this is as long as it stays below 145, I would look for it to drop. So it does have a slight bias to the downside. But like I said, there is that support that it kind of got stuck at. So my bias on this one from the daily perspective here was to the downside, but it pushed back up. So what I would look for is maybe a retest of this level. And if it breaks through, only then are we looking for price to drop, because from weekly perspective right now, and it's kind of neutral. Yen crosses, let's get into euro yen. Euro yen looking good. We have a pin bar, and so biases to the downside here and looking for price to drop. Next target here would be a 126.50 level, and I think it could go lower into 126.00. So biases to the downside for euro yen. Now, again, with all the euro and pound crosses, we do have the central banks statements coming out this week, which will make a difference. So just be mindful of that. Dollar yen, this one is just sideways. As we can see, it's been trading in this range for several weeks now. So my bias is still neutral on this one. And the way to trade this one would be just the ranges, right? So if price goes into the high of the range, looking for a potential trade to the downside, goes into the bottom, looking for a potential trade to the upside. So bias is neutral for dollar yen. And the reason it's neutral is because right now yen is strong as well as the US dollar. So that just creates this neutral stance for it. Aussie yen, bias is to the downside. It has gone through this previous support. So last week our bias was to the downside, and we have that. Now, next target here will be, so next target I'm looking at is the base of this big, huge pin here at 76.80 level. So bias is to the downside for Aussie yen. New Zealand yen, same thing, biases to the downside. Last week we were looking for price to drop, and it did. And next target here would be 71.80 level, and potentially 71.20 as well. So bias is bearish for New Zealand yen. CAD yen. CAD yen is a little bit more range bound here than the other ones. So with this one, what we are looking at is price has been trading in this range. So kind of like dollar yen. So if you go back to dollar yen, see how price has been going sideways here. So same thing with CAD yen, price has been going sideways for several weeks now. With this one, it is a bearish candle close, so bias is to the downside, but we are right into the bottom of our range. So it's very important to see if it can break the range or not. So if all the other yen crosses start to drop, chances are this can push through the support as well. So we have to look for a break, a pullback, and drop. So that's what I would be looking for. And if price does not do that, if it does not go through the support, then I would look for price to come into the support, maybe try to break through and then push back into the range. So right now, bias is range bound to bearish. So neutral to bearish is my bias on that one. All right, so let's go on to our gold here. Gold looking bearish from weekly perspective here. I would look for price to drop into 1189.90 level and then into 1182.45. So bias is to the downside. But do keep in mind, this one has been kind of going sideways here as well. So it may not go to the lower level. It can just bounce off of that. So bearish bias for gold. Oil here, oil had been dropping all week. So we have a big bearish candle close here. So bias is to the downside on this one. Next target would be 63.88 level. So bearish bias for oil. Let's take a quick peek at copper. Bearish, this was a nice pin bar. And as we can see, we got that move right after the pin bar, which we were looking for to the downside. Bias is still bearish, looking for price to come back and test the low here at 2.53, and bias after that 2.47. So bias is to the downside for copper as well. And let's take a look at our Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin, two big drops this week. From the weekly perspective, this is looking quite bearish here. And next target would be the bottom of this, or into the support here at 58.25. So bias is bearish for Bitcoin. And since we are on the topic, might as well do silver. Silver pushing lower. Last week, bias was to the downside and we got that move. Now we are coming into support. So this one we have to be careful with here. 13.70 will be the target to the downside. So bearish bias for silver here as well. Any questions? Okay, I just need to pull it up. Okay, so the request is for looking at the dollar index. All right, so we are looking for all right, so from the daily, bias is to the upside, but let's take a look at our weekly here. Weekly is interesting. So we have resistance right into there. And so let me see if I can draw our resistance here. Okay, so this is where our resistance is into 95.64 level here. So right now there is bullishness in the candle, but there are, so it's a bit of a neutral candle. We have pins on both sides here. So pins, and we are into resistance. It kind of bounced off of the resistance. So it's bullish, but bullish to neutral would be my bias. It's not completely 100% bullish. From daily perspective, though, this is moving to the upside here. So I would look for a retest of the high here, 95.64 or even 70 level there. So bias is to the upside, and when it comes into the high there, then we will have to be mindful of this one here. So I'm looking for a retest of this 95.70 level, but if it holds above this, then it could go all the way into the high of this previous candle at 96.40. But I would be concerned. I'd be paying attention to this one around 95.70 level. Right now, it is biased to the upside, but the weekly candle close is not as solid as I would like to see on this pair, I would like to see for dollar index. So there is there is this rejection here that we have to be careful with. So from daily perspective, basically, I'm just looking for price to go up, test the high. If it breaks through the high, looking for it to go higher. So bias is bullish here, but with caution. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we will call it a wrap. So you guys have a wonderful rest of the weekend. So if anybody is interested in joining me in the trade room, I'm doing a special offer for the trade room. And I need to, I'll be sending out an email about it if you're if you view my stuff on YouTube, I'll be doing that as well. I'll be sending stuff over. So check it out. And basically the offer is I'm doing for the whole year. You can join me for $997. And that's for the whole year. Plus you get my course included with that for free. So you get the pivot point indicator and my Forex course. So you get basically course, you get the $500 value course for free if you join me for the yearly, that yearly price. The prices will be going up. I'm making some changes into the around the way that I do things. So prices will be going up. So this is actually a good time to join because as of end of September, things will go up. All right, so I will wrap it up. I will send out the links for that if anybody's interested. But for now, that's it. So you guys have a wonderful evening and or wonderful weekend, rest of the weekend. And I will see you next time then. Bye for now.